Good evening and welcome to The Tonight Show. Today, the Kentucky grand jury announced their decision regarding the fatal shooting of Breonna Taylor 6 months ago. Obviously, this is a very emotional time, a very difficult time. So tonight, we'd like to start the show by speaking to our first guest about today's news and what it means for our country. We're so grateful to have her join us tonight. Please welcome from MSNBC, Joy Reid. Joy, thank you for coming on and talking to me tonight. A decision in the Breonna Taylor murder case came in today, and I wanted to get your thoughts on that. Can we first talk a little bit about who Breonna Taylor was? She was an EMT. She was an aspiring nurse.
She was only 26 years old. You know, this is, the woman in the Black Lives Matter kind of panoply of people who've been killed by police. And she was the last one really to be spoken about, which for a lot of Black women was really grating that, you know, everyone was following the George Floyd case and all of these other cases and Ahmaud Arbery and everything else. But, you know, here was this 26-year-old EMT who was serving her community, who had this, you know, all these aspirations and dreams and was her sister's best friend, and had really like changed her life and found a career that she loved, found a man that she loved. And then she's just cut down in her apartment. So basically, Breonna was asleep, according to her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker. And then they just heard a noise. They heard somebody break in, or at least he did. The facts put together are partly come from his call to her mom saying somebody broke in and shot Breonna, which indicates that he didn't know that it was police. And because Kentucky is an open carry state and he is a licensed, firearms carrier, he took out his gun to defend his girlfriend and himself from what he thought were intruders. He fired a shot. And the three police officers who had come to, they're saying it was not a no-knock warrant because they're claiming that they knocked and they said that it was police. But you have to remember, Jimmy, this was about 12:30 a.m. So this is when most people are asleep.
Wow. And
so these officers burst in and then they start shooting. They say that they shot in self-defense because Kenneth Walker shot at them. But again, he shot at an intruder. The police fire back. One of the officers, the one who was charged today, just starts shooting. He doesn't even come into the apartment. And those bullets spray everywhere. They spray into other apartments. Some bullets are lodged into other apartments. And after Breonna is hit 5 or 6 times, that's been a matter of dispute, Mr. Walker is not hit at all. He calls the mom and says, someone shot Breonna. Breonna Taylor dies. And then we just have these series of actions that are extremely questionable. Action number 1 is no action. No one tries to help Breonna. She's laying on the floor. She is not the target of any investigation. She's committed no crime. She's bleeding on the floor. No one renders aid. Police, they start, getting their own stories together. Action number 2, later on, not long after that, the boyfriend is actually charged with a crime. They try to charge Kenneth Walker with attempting to assault the police officers for shooting toward them and injuring one of them in the leg. They eventually drop those charges because of the public outrage. It says, you've got to be kidding. And action number 3, the person that they say they were investigating, his name is Jamarcus Glover. He's the ex-boyfriend of Breonna Taylor. He was in custody already. On the night of this raid, he'd already been arrested. So they weren't going there to look for him. They say they were investigating drug deals he was involved in, and they try to get him, somebody who is already incarcerated. And they say, we'll let you out. We'll give you a break, but you need to say that Breonna Taylor was involved in your drug ring. If you say that, we'll let you out. And don't ever say there's no honor among thieves. There is a lot more honor, I think, that was in that jail cell than there was among the police, because he said, I'm not doing that. I'm not implicating Breonna in a crime. She was not involved in anything that I was involved in. She had nothing to do with it. They weren't even dating anymore.
Wow.
So I think what you have is a police department that allows these officers to go in to try to search this apartment, which they're claiming that the ex-boyfriend used to use as a previous address. He had listed it as his address. And so that gives them the right to bust in and start shooting. And today, what the Attorney General, Daniel Cameron, said is everything that happened regarding the shooting was perfectly legal. Coming in at 12:30 in the morning, shooting Breonna Taylor 6 times while she's in her bed, shooting at her boyfriend, and then shooting back at him because he's in his castle trying to defend it. And all of that is fine. Not rendering aid is all fine. The only thing that was illegal was Officer Hankinson didn't aim. And because he didn't aim and shoot Breonna Taylor with good aim, and he shot around and put bullets into 3 other people's apartments, he is guilty of endangering the lives of the people in the other apartments. So today what we saw was nothing regarding Breonna Taylor. No crimes were committed according to the Attorney General. The only crimes that were committed were minor crimes of endangering the neighbors.
Normally, don't the police officers have cameras on them or some audio of what has happened?
Yes, normally police officers are supposed to have body cameras on. None of them had their body cameras on. They have not been fired for that. They have not, there's been nothing. Literally, these officers are free and clear, as if everything they did was fine. They came in without body cameras. This warrant is a suspect thing, which now the Attorney General has said, we're gonna pass all of that on to the feds. Let the feds deal with how the warrant came through. Let the feds deal with the fact that you're raiding an apartment at 12:30 a.m. Let the feds deal with the shooting of Breonna Taylor. What we're gonna say is that these officers, in the minds of the Attorney General and this grand jury, who again, were led by the Attorney General. I've been on a grand jury. The prosecutor leads you where they want you to go. What this prosecutor has essentially said is there's nothing wrong with these police officers having killed this woman and having done it without their body cameras on.
And according to him, does that end here?
It ends here from the point of view of Breonna Taylor's death. There will be no prosecution of these police officers for that. If there are going to be any further actions taken against these 3 officers, it would have to be at the federal level. It would be something on the order of a civil rights violation. But here's the problem. The head of the Justice Department right now is William Barr. And he's already said quite clearly that he believes Black Lives Matter is some sort of an insurgency or some sort of terrorist outfit. And he doesn't believe that Black people have any reason to be angry with the way that our families, that our sons, that our moms and our sisters are policed, that Black people have no standing with him. So there's zero chance that William Barr's Justice Department is going to do anything. So I think the only thing that has now happened for this family is there's been a settlement. The city of Louisville is going to pay them a bunch of money, but that happens all over the country. There's always a settlement. This is part of the cost of policing. It's built into the budget. They'd rather settle than give justice to the families.
You've been covering this closely. Are you surprised by this decision?
Nope. I'm not. I've been covering, Black Lives Matter since the Trayvon Martin case. And the only time that I've ever been surprised was in the Freddie Gray case in Baltimore when they were charged. The surprise is when there are charges. And that's only because Marilyn Mosby, who's the Attorney General in Maryland, she's just a different kind of attorney. She believes that the families have equal standing to the police. And she's paid heavily for that. The war against her, the political war to unseat her and take her down because she dared to prosecute police, shows you, and I think is a lesson to a message to every other prosecutor. The police are very much protected. Their unions are the last union standing. They're the most powerful union in America. They're untouchable almost in these cities. They eat up 20, 30, 40% of the budgets. And built into that is the idea that taxpayers will just pay out any families of the people killed and that there will never be justice because the system is designed for their good friends in the prosecutor's office to decide if their good friends in the police department have done anything wrong. You'll never get prosecutions that way.
Has anyone heard from the family of Breonna Taylor?
So, I've been in touch with Ben Crump, who represents the family, but he's actually flying, back and forth today. He's heading to Louisville. So I haven't been able to get from him what the reactions are, but I can anticipate deep disappointment. Attorney General Cameron says that he called the family today. I can't imagine what that call could have been like because I think everyone who's watched his career, he's an associate of Mitch McConnell. He was his guy. I don't think anybody who's been paying attention to him or to the way the criminal justice system works thinks that there would have been a different outcome today. So he sort of made a pretense of compassion, saying he wakes up every morning thinking about Breonna Taylor. It didn't come across very sincere. I'll just put it that way, because he really made a bigger statement about the value of police. His main message was very similar to the message he gave when he spoke at the Republican National Convention. The police are valuable. The police are doing a great job. The police are important. And that was his main message today. And I can't imagine that that was comforting to the family.
Any thoughts on what the reaction is going to be in Louisville?
It's already started. Jimmy, people are already in the streets. And look, the reality is Black people have been in the streets because of police brutality for decades and decades and decades. You can go all the way back, in the 80s, riots in Miami over police beating a man with, a giant flashlight until he died. Watts, you can go to Harlem, you can go to Newark, New Jersey, you can go to Detroit, you can go all throughout history, 60s, 70s, 80s, just keep going. And there have been people in the streets demanding justice, and nothing has changed. I can't see anything significant that has changed in the criminal justice system in my lifetime, And I don't see any change unless there is fundamental change in, number one, we as a society have to decide whether or not we think it's acceptable for police to be able to enter our homes at any time of night they want, with any amount of force they want, and kill anyone they want. If that's the society we want, we're just going to have more of this. If we at some point decide, no, policing has to have some limits. They just can't kill anyone they want and then tell any story they want and not try to save the person's life after they shoot them. We just have to decide that that's not acceptable, because until we do, this is just going to keep happening.
Can you stick around? I want to ask you about some of the debate stuff coming up next Tuesday.
Absolutely.
On and on and on. I said, and it's on.